Welcome back to Can You Dig It? Today's topic is an introduction to cultural anthropology. Cultural anthropology is the study of societies and cultures. Information about these societies and cultures is gathered through fieldwork, when an anthropologist lives and interacts with a society every day for an extended period of time. This is referred to as ethnographic work, and the written account is called an ethnography. There are two main techniques for acquiring ethnographic information. Interviewing, which is quite self-explanatory, is when an anthropologist interviews individuals to acquire information. Participant observation, the second method, incorporates interviewing but also requires the anthropologist to be with an individual or select group of people for an extended period of time daily to properly record events. This is not to say that fieldwork does not have its own issues. There's always a concern that an anthropologist may go native or stereotype the individuals they're observing and interviewing. There's also the risk that culture shock may skew observations. But why do we have culture? Why is it necessary? Humans are physically and proportionally weaker than most species, but we make up with it in our brain power. Our minds compensate by creating culture. It's how we adapt. We use it as a basis for our social interactions, and it even shapes how we view reality. There are a few things to keep in perspective when discussing cultural anthropology. The first is to keep a holistic view. No dimension of a culture can be understood in isolation. You have a better understanding of the Japanese culture by looking at all the pictures I took from my visit to Japan, rather than just this select few, or on an individual basis. But even then, it would not be a holistic or complete view of the culture. Secondly, cultural anthropologists have to be relativistic in their research. They cannot evaluate the culture they are studying by the standards of another culture. For example, here in the US, it's considered rude to eat with your elbows on the table, and you're encouraged to put unused hands under the table. Whereas much of Europe, it's considered rude to put hands under the table, because you have no idea what people are doing under there during the meal. So it would be unfair to judge one another by the other's standards. Finally, and most importantly, is cultural relativism. This is where most historic ethnographies fall short. This is the idea that no culture is inherently superior or inferior in any form, part, or as a whole. When an individual or group of people believes their culture to be superior, it's called being ethnocentric. Everyone is ethnocentric, at least to a certain extent, because we're so used to our own culture. However, some people just take it a bit farther than others. As usual, I'm going to end today's video with some suggested reading. If you want a very traditional ethnography, I recommend The Sexual Lives of Savages by Bronislaw Malinowski. Keep in mind it's a very skewed ethnography for many reasons, including culture shock and the fact that it lacks a holistic or relativistic view of the culture, but it's still studied by every anthropologist and might be worth a read. However, if you want something more fun and modern, I recommend Ants for Breakfast. The author is an archaeologist, but he wrote about his time living among the Kalinga of the northern Philippines. It is definitely worth it just for the entertaining anecdotes.